Hello everybody, I am Takuma Nuva with Keep the Peace, and today we are going to look at set number 10306, the Atari 2600. It retails for $239.99 United States dollars and has 2,532 pieces. So, with all the boilerplate nonsense out of the way, let's talk about the set itself. Alright, calm down. Alright, so, the Atari 2600. You're probably wondering why it took this long to get the review out. The short version is somebody dropped the ball, and I didn't get it when I was supposed to, and then life happened. And so now, let me see, that was supposed to be what, I think like August? And now it is July of the following, it's almost a year later, if my math is right. Holy smokes. Yeah, couldn't be worse timing. It would have gone better if it had gone better, whatever that. Like, anyways, yeah, so the Atari 2600. I do want to say that LEGO was very generous in sending this to me. Hashtag I was given the set for free. LEGO sent me the set. I'm going to review it. And anyone who knows me at all from past years with TTV knows that I am a highly opinionated person, so yeah, you ain't gonna stop me from saying whatever it is I want to say. Alright, so the Atari 2600, why am I reviewing it? Well, because LJ said, hey, we can review this set. You're a gamer and you're old. Maybe not those exact words, but that was the intent behind them. So yeah, but I actually grew up with an actual Atari 2600. And so when I was told, hey, one of us gets to review this set, I jumped at the chance. I'm probably just gonna go piece by piece. Not literally. There was, what was the number? 2,050, whatever. There are sort of, it depends on the way you want to look at it. 4 components, 6 components, I don't know, but it pretty much comes down to the console itself, the controller, these sort of mini builds, and then the shelf of cartridges. So I actually think I'm going to talk about the shelf of cartridges first because it's the simplest out of them. I'm a big fan of this. They slide in and out of this sort of shelf component really nicely. And although I am not a fan of stickers, this actually wasn't so bad. So there are 3 of these cartridges for classic Atari 2600 games. There is Adventure, there is Centipede, and there is Asteroids. Oh gosh. Although I grew up with an Atari 2600, for the record, I'm not that old, it was my uncle's. And then he gave it to my family. I did not grow up with any of these 3 games, actually. The ones I played most were Chopper Command, Pitfall, River Raid, Laser Blast, stuff like that. But even still, I like the cartridges. They feel really nice. Putting them together was kind of interesting, and just the way that the pieces went together. So yeah, I'm a big fan. And then there's this cool shelf thing, which we did not have the shelf thing for our cartridges. We just kept all of ours in like a big sort of clear plastic shoebox container. Let's talk about these mini builds. So as I mentioned, there are the 3 games, Centipede, Asteroids, Adventure. There's also a mini build associated with each. And these were also really fun to put together just because of the sort of variation that goes into each of them. I'm a big fan of the way that the Asteroids one comes together. I like the little, blasting apart of the asteroid, and the way they handle the sort of laser beam going to it. I find that novel. Yeah, it's interesting. None of these were necessarily super complicated to build. Maybe this one most of all. It's actually hard to say. The Adventure one, I'm familiar enough with laser or asteroids. Even if I've never played, everyone knows what asteroids is pretty much. And Centipede is pretty simple. You're just a line of blocks going around eating other blocks. Obviously, these little dioramas are based off of the artwork on the cartridges and not the game itself, because otherwise this would just be like lots of black blocks and a few white ones. Adventure is the one I actually have no knowledge of. I've never played it. I might have to at some point, just so I know what on earth I'm missing. Also, I believe this is supposed to be a dragon. It looks kind of just like a big sort of serpent, but I can dig it all the same. Okay, yeah, one of those more Eastern-style dragons that are much more Wyrm-like. Is that how you pronounce it? Wyrm? I don't know. I'm Minnesotan. I don't pronounce anything right, you betcha. But yeah, so this one's cool with the castle. I also... Okay, you can barely see the castle in the artwork, and actually I need to check the original Adventure cartridge to confirm this. But I found it funny that the castle is yellow, much like the original LEGO castle was. Maybe that was intentional, maybe that was coincidence. I'll have to figure it out later. And then the centipede also goes together really well. Some of these... I don't actually know what these joints are called anymore. They're not technically CCBS, are they? I don't know. I'm just making this up as I go along. Fake fan, I know. But the centipede's really cool. The segmented body, just like a centipede does. Yeah. I like it. But as cool as all these are, like, obviously the main piece to all this is the console itself and the controller. And another thing that's worth saying is that I did not have an actual D controller that came with the Atari 2600. My uncle apparently had some others that were, I'm guessing, I don't know, some sort of like aftermarket. That's not the word. Third party, whatever you call it. But yeah, the controllers were not actually the ones that would come with the console where you could buy it back in the day. But it's still really cool. I like that they've got this sort of hose piece to act as the cable, and it actually plugs into the back for player 1 or player 2. And then the button is just one of those sort of, circular plates where it doesn't do anything. But the joystick actually does move in place, and there's like some rubber bits down there in the build that are... It's actually kind of cool the way it was put together. I imagine that it's actually not too far-fetched from the way one would actually work, minus all the electrical components. But yeah, it feels really nice. It doesn't travel too far in any direction, but also, again, I didn't have one of the originals, so maybe that is accurate. And then there is the console itself, which obviously took the longest to build. It was also a lot of fun to put together, I gotta say. And, like, one thing I distinctly remember when I was building this thing, it just blew my mind. I have never gotten so much nostalgia over a Switch before. Let me say that again. I got nostalgic over a Switch. Okay? Seriously. So there's the two kinds of Switches on the Atari 2600. There's these like toggle type ones that just go up and down. And those are fine. You got one for power, and then one for just choosing whether your TV was a color TV or just a black and white. Yeah. For anyone who maybe doesn't have that sort of historical knowledge, back in the day, some TVs could only display in grayscale, no colors. In before all the pedantic people about whether or not black and white are colors. But over on this side, you have the game select and the game reset. Now, game reset was basically kind of like a quick reboot. And then game select, your game typically had multiple game modes, depending on the game. I guess not all of them do. But in particular, say the Indy 500 game, I used to play that one quite a bit. That one had different racetracks that you could pick. And so you would use the game select and you would press it to pick which track you wanted to race on. But unlike these toggle ones that just go up and down, these ones, the press, and then they flip back up. And this is what absolutely got to me. It's just like some rubber bands and stuff going on the backside here. But, oh my gosh, like, it's something that you won't be able to experience unless you've actually had a 2600 before, is that these switches, just the feedback, the pressure it takes, just the way it feels to push these down, it's like traveling back in time. It feels scary accurate to how the actual switches on the Atari 2600 felt. I could spend all day just depressing these switches. Okay, maybe not all day. We call that hyperbole. But it just feels really good. It feels super accurate. And I don't know if there was some sort of mad machinations behind the scenes when they were designing this set to get it to feel so good, or if that was just like a happy coincidence. But my goodness, it feels so good. And a feature I did not point out, but everyone should be well aware of, is that these little cartridges actually do slide into the slot. It's pretty cool. There's nothing that like holds it in there, but it's well enough on friction. Oh yeah, one other thing I didn't mention is that the inside of the cartridges has like this green in there, which I'm guessing is mostly meant to sort of, in a certain sense, mimic the sort of the board or the board, the microchip, whatever the heck that was in there. Typically, those were green. They weren't flat like that. They were on this plane, not that plane. But it's a nice extra little detail. And then you can't really see them from your angle, but there are also some switches on the back. They're just they're not super easy to flip back and forth. These are the back sides of, I forget what piece that was. It was like an axe or a hammer or something. It was like a Lego tool, but these are meant to be like your difficulty sliders. And what was the other one? I've quite forgotten. But so, already spoilers. Yeah, so there's also difficulty sliders. The Atari 2600 model I had was actually a slightly different one, and I will take a quick tangent to say that I actually really liked the instruction booklet because it had some extra trivia stuff in there. Originally I was going to come into this with some cool trivia bits to sprinkle in along the way, but after looking through the instruction booklet, I actually realized a lot of what I would have said was already in there. So rather than spoil that, I'm just going to leave that there. But I had a slightly different model that came out, I think it was before this model. Well, it was either before or after, obviously. But so the one I had actually had 6 switches on the front, so these difficulty sliders were actually on the front and they had their own labels and everything. So a slightly different model. But the other sort of big, like the sort of mechanical component, if you will, to the set is actually this sort of functionality where the top of the case slides forward, and when you push it far enough, you have this little diorama that comes up. And this was also really fun to build. I really like the way they built the Atari 2600, little mini Atari 2600 in this diorama here. I'll have to get some B-roll of that so you can see it, perhaps. And yeah, like obviously, again, the 2600 came out before I was even born, but it was still something that, it was my first quote-unquote gaming console. Not that it was mine, but yeah, it was really cool. The little, what do you call those, micro figures? It was a lot of fun to put together, and it was really cool. And I enjoyed putting together the actual mechanism that causes this to happen. However, there are some criticisms I have with the set. Definitely, a few. So, first things first. You think back to, say, the Super Nintendo set that LEGO had. I don't even know if it's still available or not, but it had that thing where it had like Mario on the TV and you turned the crank and Mario went up and down. That was really cool, and I think that made sense. This, to me, as cool as this diorama is, this functionality, it makes zero sense to me. I actually do not like it, and I'm not sure what decision went into this, because it's not something that, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Verisimilitude? I don't know. But with the Super Nintendo, it made sense. Oh, you have like this TV that, you can show action on a screen or whatever. And the Atari 2600 never did this. Not that that's like, it's not that everything has to be like, accurate to the point of like, hey, there was no diorama in the middle of an Atari 2600, obviously. But it feels so weird. It feels completely arbitrary. Like, there was no reason to do this way. Like, the diorama is cool. The diorama would have been better if it was just a separate thing, like the dioramas for the artwork on the cartridges. Putting it inside the 2600, I think, was kind of a silly move that I really don't understand. Because, you're essentially just playing this in one of two ways, right? Either closed or open. If it's closed, this is what the Atari 2600 actually looks like, and this is what I want to see, because this is what's cool. But that diorama is hidden there. It's completely pointless. Like, you're not going to know it's there. On the other hand, if you slide it open and like this, okay, well, now you can see the diorama, but you got all this extra hangover on the console itself. And it has deformed the console. It no longer looks like it used to. And also now the diorama is kind of hiding the sort of the panel up here with the switches and stuff. And so it's like, well, what was the point in having this here if you're going to display it like this so you can actually see everything you built, and then it's going to cover up some of the part of the main attraction anyway? Because like obviously this is only a small piece of it, but this is also where most of your detail is. Is kind of where your eye is drawn. Your eye isn't drawn to just this big flat black piece here, the grill, as it were. So yeah, it makes zero sense to me. The diorama is cool. It does not belong inside the console. I want to be able to see both the console and the diorama if it's going to be there. And then so these little sort of mini builds were also cool. They're all right. It's another sort of thing where it's like, the cartridges actually existed, the console actually existed, the controller actually existed. These are builds that are abstracted from the art. Like, these were not actual things that ever existed. And so while they're cool and I enjoy them, there's part of me that almost wishes that that piece count had instead gone to something else. And maybe because the same could be said with the diorama inside too. Like, the 2600 came with 2 controllers. We got 1, and I don't know, maybe the decision was like, well, you don't need more than 1 controller to build, that's just, copy, paste, I don't know. But even then, if not that, I would have at least liked to see, say, a paddle controller. It was essentially just a dial and a button. And so it was a controller that was used in a couple games. The ones I played that I remember using with are Indy 500 and Tennis, if you can believe it. Also, Kaboom. But so the easiest one to explain is the Indy 500 game. Like, you had 1 dial and a button. The button was your accelerator, and the dial was basically your steering. And so the Indy 500 game was top-down. You raced around the track. You held down the button to go, let go if you wanted to slow down or stop, and then you used the dial to turn. It would have been really cool to have a paddle controller come with the set to go with the traditional joystick. Again, these were fun, and maybe the set designers wanted to include more of a pop-up color, but it also kind of begs the question of, like, where do these get displayed? Like, the amount of real estate this starts to take up is quickly grows. And while this in and of itself, I think this is kind of like a nice profile. Once you start adding all these in, then needs to take up space in the front, or you need to find space on the sides. Yeah, this is definitely a bit of a real estate hog to a certain extent, depending on how you want to display it. And so, again, very fun, very cool, like the colors. This is just, obviously, as is everything in here, it's my opinion. And I would not be surprised if there are definitely people out there who like this set and actually really enjoyed this part most of all. This bit, you're never going to convince me of. It's cool, but it's pointless. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all of my major thoughts on it. So kind of, just wrapping everything up, final thoughts. Is it worth it? And that was a question I really think is going to depend a lot on the person. Again, it's basically $240, and even if I had not been sent this set by LEGO, that's the biggest thing, is would I have bought this anyway? And yeah, I don't know. Let me put it this way: $240 ain't cheap. But I also have to imagine that it's a certain degree of, like, who is this set meant for? Who's the target audience? I don't think, your average Fortnite player is rushing out to get an Atari 2600 set, or begging mom and dad for one. As cool as I find it. But it's going to be targeting people from an older generation, I feel, or people who are really into video game history, collectors. I feel like the target demographic is probably the one that has a little bit more of disposable income to put towards something of this price. And so I think it really just comes down to whether or not you fall within that target audience. Had I not been sent it by LEGO, would I have bought it myself? There's no way to know for sure, obviously. But I think the odds are about 75-25, because it's a chunk of change, but it is definitely a piece of my childhood that really resonates with me. And actually, so a funny little story is when I mentioned that this set even existed and that I was getting a chance to review it, the CEO where I work went out and he actually bought one for himself. Or did he buy it and then he told me? And that actually he might have mentioned that he was getting it, and then I mentioned I was going to get to review it. It was one way or the other, I don't remember. But he actually went out, he got it himself, and he built it. He had a lot of fun, and actually he has it on display now in his office. So again, there's definitely a target audience for this sort of set, but it's not probably, you know, it's definitely an A-fold thing. That goes without saying. But yeah, I think that pretty much it. Yeah, it's a really cool set, and it's still available to purchase this far after when it was supposed to be reviewed. So if it's of interest to you, yeah, maybe go out and pick it up. Thanks again to LEGO for sending it to me. Yeah, I don't have anything to tell you specifically to mention in the comments below, but go ahead and comment something. I will read it. Maybe I'll even respond to it. Who knows? Amuse me. You know, if you need a prompt, what was your first video game you remember playing? Don't ask me for mine because I can't remember. Actually, it was probably Turbo Math Facts when I was 5. Games came on floppy disks. Multiple floppy disks. Yeah, that's a story for another time. I'm Takuma Nuva. This is Keep the Peace. This is the Atari 2600 set. All that rubbish about liking, subscribing, and all that nonsense. I'll see you later. Peace out.